From time to time, I like to think about what is my favorite television show, and my favorite television show of all time is All in the Family. That is the best show that I ever watched. I think Norman Lear is one of the people. I generally have the attitude that a lot of the people in Hollywood are pretty morally corrupt and pretty indecent people, and that they pour a lot of nonsense and a lot of discord and a lot of opposition and a lot of racism and a lot of sexism and a lot of the bad things into our society. And unfortunately, they are generously and more than generously rewarded for this. And not only that, they become our idols and icons. And they take away from us our ability to have a sense of self and a sense of our self-worth and decency, because they take moments out of our lives where we could be actually reflecting on our own abilities to do things and our own powers of doing things. But occasionally it's not like this, and with Norman Lear, it is not like this for me. It seems to me that he, in All in the Family, the series, he struck a delicate balance between portraying, incessant conflict in a family, and also like the harmony of a family and the love was like the animating force in that show. So it's things like this that suggest to me that we can teach people can be taught to not be racists, just as they can be taught to be racists by what they see. They can be taught to be violent in their impulses, just as they can be taught to not be violent in their impulses. Very few people who watch carefully All in the Family, and I would set aside a couple hours with my mom on Sunday nights, and we would watch All in the Family and the Jeffersons together. We always watch those shows together, and that would usually be on a Sunday. Now on a Saturday, I would drag her to one or two theaters. Like one time we went all the way to Cherryvale, and then we went all the way to the Coronado Theater on the other side of town, which is actually the other way. Actually, Cherryvale's that way, and Coronado Theater is that way. But we would have great time watching movies together and talking about the movies and laughing at the movies that we watched. And so that was a substance of our lives together when we weren't fighting. See, when we weren't having our fights, then we would watch TV together, and when we laugh together and when we see things together like that, we would really enjoy life. And it was rather miraculous, I think, that Norman Lear was able to do this. He has a very beautiful wife, Arianna Huffington, and he deserves that wife, and he deserves a good life, because he did a lot for America. He did a lot to bind together America. Steve Allen, the talk show host, complained in a book of his called Barbarians in the Gates, whereby he meant the people in our television industry, the people in our movie industry are kind of making the country a bad place. And that was not necessarily, and that was not the point if you watched Norman Lear's All in the Family, because you found an Archie Bunker who had racism on the surface and who wasn't a racist. You saw Mike Stivic, in conversation with Archie Bunker, sometimes in heated argument with him. But the fact that Stivic knew that Archie loved Gloria and he loved Gloria too was the bond. See, that showed you the bond. That made Archie not be able to hate Mike Stivic, and he otherwise would have. But it was the brilliance of Lear that portrayed that. So art can be a counter poison, if you will, a counter poison to racism, to hatred, to sexism, to all the bad things. When it's good, you see, when it achieves that balance, it is very good. And in his case, he's a genius, in my opinion, a genius artist, and he deserves a lot of credit for having been able to steer that very fine line between being critical of the country and complimenting the country, being getting into issues of racism that could cause people's opinions of the races to be divided, and actually portraying it in such a way that it brought you closer together. If you were black and you watched it and you saw the way the Jefferson family was portrayed, you could not be dissatisfied. And you could not be dissatisfied with white people. You became less racist, I believe, or less, that flack or that static in the background of your mind was resolved by that show. And so that's how it was for me. And I wonder if other people had the same experience with it. That was my experience. It's one of my favorite shows. I think it's one of the good things about Hollywood. And as Rob Reiner said when he was commenting and looking back on All in the Family, he said it made an indelible impression on the minds of Americans, and it always will be there for some of the people who in that generation who grew up in the 70s and 80s who watched it.